everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys a really fun video, another tier maker video. Today I'm going to be tier ranking all of the series that I have ever read. I will not be talking about series that are not yet completed or series that I have not yet read the entirety of. So today I have about 26 series to talk about, and that may not sound like a lot, but considering that I didn't seriously get back into reading until the later half of 2018 because of life and college, basically, that is why I only have 26 series to talk about. Also, I'm not going to be talking about series that I read when I was a child, like books that I have no memory of. I'm not going to talk about because that's just not fair to rate them because I literally have no recollection of them. I am going to be wearing my glasses because I need them to be able to see my laptop screen, so I apologize for the glare with my ring light, but let's just get into it. All right, guys, here is our tier maker list, and here are all the series that I'm going to be rating today. I did want to address quickly the vicious kind of duology that is a duology right now. So I know that V.E. Schwab is planning on writing more books in the series, but as of now she hasn't released like a cover or a title or anything like that, and it took her like 5 years to write Vengeful, which was the sequel to Vicious. So I don't think we're gonna see a third book for a very long time, so that's why I am including it on this tier maker list. So right now I'm just kind of thinking of it as a duology. So then as far as our categories, we've got God tier, Demigod, which Demigod are series that are still really special to me. They are really great series in my mind. But I am only saving God tier for only like a few series that I absolutely cannot live without, essentially. Then we have Great, Good, Meh, and Yikes. Yikes is basically series that I think are absolute trash. So without further ado, I'm just gonna start with the order that I have these series in. So first is A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I just finished this trilogy like a couple of weeks ago, so this series is pretty fresh in my mind. Also, I want to say that I am not counting A Court of Frost and Starlight because, as I've talked about in my reading vlogs for this series, I do not plan on reading that novella. I've heard that it's very unnecessary and it's just not a good book. So we are just going to rate the trilogy as is. So I am kind of flip-flopping between Great and Good, to be quite honest, because yes, on the one hand, I gave the first book 4 stars and I gave the other 2 books 5 stars. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most well-written books of all time. My rating usually goes on how entertained I was and how much I enjoyed the book. So right now I'm gonna put it in Good tier. Because let's face it, I feel like Sarah J. Maas can do better. I think the Throne of Glass series is so much better. But I know that a lot of people have a very special attachment to this series, so, you know, no offense to you guys. Also, I do want to say as a general disclaimer, I do not mean to offend anyone. If I put your favorite series of all time in the Yikes category, that is no personal offense to you. This is just my opinion about these books. So yeah, The Court of Thorns and Roses, I think it's a good series. I enjoyed my time with it. It's definitely not a series that's one of my favorites of all time. So I think I'm just gonna stick with the Good tier. So next we have A Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the Meh category. So I did do a binge reading vlog where I binged the entire trilogy, so if you want to know my in-detail thoughts about these 3 books, I will definitely link that video up in the cards above. But just to give my general thoughts, I gave the first book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy the world that V.E. Schwab created, and I was really liking the characters. But then the other 2 books in the trilogy I thought were very, very lackluster. I gave both of them 3 stars. I just think that V.E. Schwab is capable of so much better. Like the stories, especially the story of the second book, to me was so pointless. And then the third book I thought was way too long and just boring. So yeah, it's just meh. I think it could have been an amazing series, but I just feel like V.E. Schwab kind of dropped the ball with the other 2 books. Next we have The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I'm gonna put this in the Great category. I really, really enjoyed this series when I read it back in December of 2018. Marissa Meyer is one of my favorite YA authors in general, and I just love the sci-fi twist that she put to these classic fairy tale stories. I definitely want to reread these books at some point because that's how much I enjoyed them. I don't really have much more to say about that. Then we have The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. I think I'll put it in Good. I'm kind of flip-flopping between good and meh, to be quite honest, but you know, I loved the finale. I loved City of Heavenly Fire. I will admit to the world that this series is very problematic, especially the earlier books with like the weird like incest plot line, and Cassandra Clare has also written some weird like incest fan fiction in the past, so that's very weird. I will acknowledge that for sure. But the series as a whole, I do think overall it's a good series. Like I said, I loved the finale. I enjoyed most of the books. I think I gave most of them 4 stars. I mean, it's definitely my least favorite series of her entire Shadowhunter Chronicles universe, but I still think it's good. I think it's a pretty solid series. All right, next up we have the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare, which for those of you guys that are not familiar with the Shadowhunters universe, this is a trilogy that takes place in the 1870s, so it's definitely a prequel to the Mortal Instruments, but it takes place in the same universe, and this is going in God tier. This is by far my favorite series in her entire Shadowhunter Chronicles universe. I honestly don't think that The Last Hours is gonna compare, even though I've only read the first book of that series. I don't think it's gonna quite beat the Infernal Devices in my mind, and a lot of people agree with me. This is a lot of people's favorite series in that whole universe. The characters are fantastic. I think that Cassandra Clare's writing style really lends itself to this time period. It just works really well. Yes, I can go on and on, but that is definitely God tier. Next we have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I am also putting this in God tier. I binged this entire trilogy in like 3 or 4 days, and I also did a reading vlog for it, so I will link that video up in the cards above. I think that's my favorite binge reading vlog that I've made so far, just because I, from page 1, adored that series so much. Jude is one of my favorite characters of all time. I also really enjoyed Prince Carden and the world that this takes place in and the story. So yeah, and I also adored the last book, and I know a lot of people didn't. But yeah, this is just such a strong series. Another series that I cannot wait to reread at some point. Next I have The Diviners. Okay, this is actually kind of difficult, because do I want to put it in God tier or is it demigod tier? This is very difficult for me because it is a series that does mean a lot to me. It's a 4-book series. The first 3 books I thought were pretty much perfection. But the finale, which is The King of Crows, was definitely somewhat of a disappointment. I remember when I first read it, I gave it 5 stars, but upon reflection, I kind of realized that it's definitely more of a 4-star book. A lot of people were giving it lower ratings than that, and I can totally understand why. The pacing was pretty slow the entire time. I did like the topics that Libba Bray covered in that book for sure, but the pacing was too slow, and the ending was just not as epic as I think we all wanted. So I think because of that finale, I'm gonna have to put it in demigod. If I'm disappointed in the finale of a series, it's not gonna be God tier. It's not gonna be one of my all-time favorite series, unfortunately, but it is still a series that holds a very special place in my heart, and I wholeheartedly recommend it if you're looking for like a paranormal / sci-fi historical fiction YA series. It really is top notch, and the audiobooks are the best audiobooks that I've ever listened to. Next we have, oh boy, we've got Harry Potter next. Oh no, where do I put you? Oh my god. So those of you guys that live under a rock, there has been a lot of controversy with J.K. Rowling, who of course is the author of these books. And this is no news to anyone. J.K. Rowling has been problematic for years. Let's not discount that, but particularly in the last couple of weeks especially, she has been saying some very transphobic things on Twitter. And I think a lot of us who absolutely adore this series have finally woken up to how problematic she is. And I'm sorry, say what you want, as much as we all love these books, you can't separate the books from the creator. Although there is a very popular conspiracy theory going around that J.K. Rowling did not actually write these books, because it doesn't really make sense that someone who's transphobic would write a series about how love conquers all and about conquering bigotry and things like that. Before all this controversy came out, I probably would have put it in God or demigod tier, but honestly, just like her shenanigans and her just being a terrible, awful person, It doesn't make me want to ever reread the books, honestly. That's how hurt I am, and that's how hurt a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community feel, who loved these books as well. So I think I'm just gonna have to stick it in the yikes category, and I'm sad, but like, yikes. And okay, so we're gonna stop talking about that because it makes me really sad and really upset to talk about. Next is the Hunger Games. I mean, God tier, of course, why not? I mean, come on. I reread this trilogy pretty recently. I will link that binge reading blog up in the cards above. And yeah, I think it's a series that a lot of us absolutely adore. I know that Mockingjay is not the best finale out there, so I mean, technically it should probably be in demigod tier, but I mean, I think we all have a very strong connection to this series and what the series stands for, and I love the characters. And I am also not counting The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes as a part of the series. This is its own separate trilogy, and I think that The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is its own separate book, just set in the same universe, because that book was not very good. I gave it 3 stars. I also did a reading vlog and discussion about that book, so if you're interested to hear my thoughts, I will also link that up in the cards above. Next we have the Illuminae Files, which is by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So this is a science fiction YA trilogy. So I did give all 3 of the books in this series 5 stars, but I will be upfront and say that Obsidian, which was the final book, definitely disappointed me. I don't know, the story just wasn't nearly as strong as the other 2 books in my opinion, but it is a series that I would love to reread at some point. I think that it's a really well done series. I love the multimedia aspect. So do I put it in demigod or do I put it in great? Ooh, what do we do? What do we do? I think for now I'm gonna stick it in great, because I do think it's a really great series, you know, I can't debate that. All right, so next we have The Dark Artificer by Cassandra Clare. This is a trilogy in the Shadowhunters Chronicles that takes place after the events of the Mortal Instruments. So if we're placing it chronologically, it would be the Infernal Devices, Mortal Instruments, then the Dark Artificers. I didn't give any of the books in this series 5 stars. I definitely think that Cassandra Clare could have done some things differently, especially with the way that she wrote the final book in the trilogy. I think that book was way too long, and I think that the direction the story went in wasn't the best, and it wasn't my favorite. But I still think it's a really good series. Like, but is it great or is it good? I really do love the characters. Julian Blackthorne is one of my top book boyfriends of all time. I love his character so much. But at the same time, I don't have the strongest attachment to most of the other characters, if I'm being honest. Ooh, what do I do? What do I do? I think my gut is just telling me to stick it in the good category, even though I do think that it's slightly better than the Mortal Instruments, but not by a whole lot in my mind. I'm just kind of going off of my gut reaction here. All right, next is the Legend Trilogy by Marie Lu. I'm gonna stick this in the meh category. So this is a dystopian trilogy that came out around the same time as Divergent and Hunger Games. You know, there was that whole trend in the YA genre where everybody was just writing dystopian. And I liked this series. I remember I gave the first 2 books like 3 or 3.5 stars, and then I gave the last book 4 stars because I did think that it stepped things up quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's not a series that I really have any interest in rereading. I'll probably end up unhauling those books. They are on my bookshelves right now, but I'll probably end up unhauling them at some point. All right, next is the Renegades Trilogy, another series by Marissa Meyer. So I'm a little conflicted about this series because I did give 2 out of the 3 books 5 stars, and I gave Arch Enemies, which was the middle book, 4.5 stars. But I can definitely recognize that there are definitely some weaknesses to that series. I will say the characters are fantastic. I think that that was the best thing that that series has going for it, is the characters. But the story definitely kind of went in some weird directions, and I think that it overall could have used maybe more action, considering that it's a series centering around superheroes. And I adored Supernova, which was the final book of the series. I gave it 5 stars, and I put it in my best books of 2019 video, you know, so I loved that book a lot. I think I'm gonna have to stick it in the good tier. I think that's a solid place to put it. I'm definitely conflicted about it, as you can see, but I mean, part of me wants to put it in the great tier, but is it really that great? I don't really think so. So we're gonna stick it in good. All right, next we have Scythe. by Neil Shusterman. Okay, do I put this in God or do I put this in demigod? This is a fantastic dystopian slash utopian trilogy. I recommend it all the time to people that want book recommendations and they tell me that they really like sci-fi and dystopian and things like that. Like, this is such a well done series. Neil Shusterman is one of my favorite authors at this point. And I gave the first book 4.5 stars and I gave the other 2 books 5 stars. So, ooh, I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick it in demigod. Part of me wants to put it in God tier because I know it's a series I'm gonna want to reread, and it is a series that I do have pretty strong feelings about, but something in my gut is telling me to put it in demigod, so we're gonna stick it there for now. Next we have the Shadow and Bone trilogy, or the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. We are sticking in that in the meh category. I liked the first book actually the most, which was Shadow and Bone, which is the cover you see here. And the other 2 books, I gave Siege and Storm like 3 stars, and I kind of hated Ruin and Rising. I gave that one like 2 stars. It's definitely Leigh Bardugo's weakest work. The Six of Crows duology is so much better. Next we have the Shatter Me series by Tahira Mafi. I'm gonna stick that in the yikes category. So I read this entire series in the span of like, I think a month. There's 6 books in the series plus a couple of novellas, but I didn't bother reading the novellas. And it's another dystopian romance series. It's definitely more romance heavy. And as much as I love Tahira Mafi's writing style, this series is so bad. Like, and it's crazy because I gave all of these books like 3 to 4 stars. Like, I enjoyed them at the time that I read them. But as soon as I was done reading this series, I was just like, that was a bad series. I don't know, like, man, the story was all over the place. Also, the last 2 books basically have the same story when you think about it, and like, most of the characters were annoying as hell. I did not like Juliet, who's the main character, and that's a big problem if I don't like the main character. I think the only character I really liked was Kenji, and he's just a side character. He's not even that much of a major character. I mean, he does get his own POV in the last couple of books, but yeah, I mean, he's not gonna redeem this series for me. It's yikes. If you love this series as like a guilty pleasure read, good on you. And like I said, I do really appreciate Tahira Mafi's writing style, but man, this series just ain't it, you guys. Now, if you want to read a really good Tahira Mafi book, I wholeheartedly recommend A Very Large Expanse of Sea, which is a book she came out with in 2018. It's a contemporary book. Next, we have the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. So I'm gonna be real with you guys. It's definitely not God tier for me because the second book kind of disappointed me, like the story overall, and I thought the pacing was a little weird, which is funny because a lot of people tend to like Crooked Kingdom more than Six of Crows, but I have the opposite opinion. So I think I'm gonna put it in demigod because I adore the characters. Oh my goodness, some of the best written characters I've ever read. I loved Six of Crows. I did give that 5 stars, like I said, but I just wanted so much more from the second book, unfortunately, so it's definitely not God tier, but I do recognize that it's a really well done YA fantasy duology. Next we have Stalking Jack the Ripper. Ooh, I'm gonna put this in meh, let's be real. So I've talked about Thomas Cresswell a lot, who is the main hero in this series. But Audrey Rose frustrated me so much, especially in the last 2 books of the series. Also, I was overall just really disappointed by both Escaping from Houdini and Capturing the Devil. I just thought that both of those books were so meh, which is very disappointing because I liked Stalking Jack the Ripper and I really loved Hunting Prince Dracula, which is the second book. I almost gave that book 5 stars. That's how much I loved it. There's definitely more cons than pros with this series, so I'm just gonna stick it in the meh category. Next we have The Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. I think I'm gonna stick this in the great category. I know a lot of people absolutely adore this duology, and I don't blame you if you do. My main gripe with this series was that the writing style took a lot of effort for me to understand what was happening, and that may make me sound like an idiot, but whatever. So I did give the first book 4 stars and I gave the second book 4.5 stars. I did think that the second book was a lot better. And I will say that these characters and the story are very distinctive. It's still a series that I think about quite often. And I think I would like to reread it at some point, maybe by listening to the audiobook or something like that. Because I did read it just physically the first time that I read it so that I could like tab and annotate it. Next we have the Selection Trilogy by Kiera Cass. I also reread these books recently and I did a binge reading vlog for them. So as entertaining as the first book especially was, I gave that one 5 stars. The other 2 books I gave 4 stars. I mean, I'm gonna stick it in the good tier. I mean, let's admit it, it's not the most well-written series of all time. We can all agree that this is not high art or high literature in any way, so I think I'm just gonna keep that in the good tier. Then we have the Three Dark Crowns series by Kendara Blake. I'm also gonna stick this in the good tier. So this is a 4-book series. I liked the first book. I gave it 3 stars mainly because the pacing was so slow. I loved the second book, One Dark Throne, almost gave it 5 stars. I loved it so much. And then the last 2 books of the series took a weird turn. I just thought that the story was odd, and then there were some character deaths in the final book that I was like, why? I don't know. So I do think the series started off pretty strong, but I still gave most of the books like 4 stars, so I definitely think it's better than the meh category. All right, next up is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J Maas. I think we can all predict where this is going. This is definitely a god tier series for me. It has a very special place in my heart. There are technically 8 books to this series and I enjoyed all of them for the most part. I will say Tower of Dawn kind of disappointed me because the pacing was so slow. And there are some other books in this series that definitely have pacing issues. And also the prequel novellas weren't amazing. I think I gave that bind up like 3.5 stars, but all of the other books in the series I really enjoyed. Queen of Shadows is still my absolute favorite book of that series. I still think that it's Sarah J Maas's best work, although I haven't read House of Earth and Blood yet. But yeah, I just love that series so much. I cannot wait to reread it at some point. It is just absolutely phenomenal. I adore all of the characters. I could keep talking about that series forever. Next we have To All the Boys I Loved Before. I'm gonna put this in the great tier actually because I just had such a fun time reading these books. I listened to the audiobooks when I was on a very long road trip and it was just a really nice way to pass the time. I really liked all the characters. I know a lot of people hate on Peter Kay, but I actually liked his character a lot. Yeah, he wasn't perfect, but he is a teenage boy, so you know, I get it. And I actually really enjoyed the final book in the series, even though I know a lot of people thought it was kind of pointless. I just liked where the story went. And I just love the whole family dynamic that we have going on with Laura Jean and her sisters and their dad. It's just so sweet. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stick to the great tier for that. Next up we have the Twilight Saga by Stephanie Meyer. I think we could all guess that I'm gonna put this in the yikes category. So this is a series that I adored when I was in high school. When I read it for the first time, I think I was like a freshman in high school and I think pretty much all the books were out and I just like binged the series. I loved them so much. But as the years have gone by, this series has definitely not aged well, and very recently I was on Twitter and someone brought up a really great point about how Stephanie Meyer treated the Native American community in this series, because you know Jacob is a part of a Native American tribe. I cannot remember which tribe specifically. I'll put the name of it here. But the way that she wrote all of those characters was just kind of yikes when you think about it, and that like all of them would turn into beasts, you know, they would all turn into wolves and that kind of makes them look like savages. That's very yikes. Also, the fact that not only did she make Jacob imprint on a baby, I think there were numerous characters, like maybe cousins of his or like siblings or something. I think they also imprinted on children, which is very yikes. So yeah, I do not plan on rereading this series. I was going to kind of like hate read these books, but I have no interest. I think that that is just all really yikes. Next up we have the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. I think I'm gonna put this in the great tier. I really enjoyed this series. Now, I didn't give any of the books in this series 5 stars by any means, but I loved the world that Rochelle Mead created. I really enjoyed the characters, especially Lissa and Christian. I really, really loved their romance and their characters. Yeah, I don't know, it's just a really fun YA paranormal series. Yeah, it's just a fun time, and I do think it's a series that I would eventually want to reread. I genuinely had a good time with it. Last but not least, we have the Vicious, what I'm calling the Vicious Duology by V.E. Schwab. I think I'm gonna put this in the great tier. So I gave Vicious 4 stars and I gave Vengeful 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed those books, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what V.E. Schwab does with this series going forward, because like I said, she definitely confirmed that there's going to be a 3rd book, but we have no idea when that's coming out. The characters are really cool. I love the overall premise. Okay guys, so I did end up putting Renegades in the great tier just because I was thinking about how much I absolutely adore the characters in that series. And for the most part, I did like the story. Like I said, Supernova completely blew me away, even though I can fully recognize that there are issues with that book and the series overall. But yeah, I definitely think it deserves to be in the great tier with the Lunar Chronicles. So this is my completed tier ranking list of all of the series that I've ever read. I might do another one of these tier ranking videos maybe in a few years once I've read more series. All right guys, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. I would also love it if you would press that like button and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. Also, I would love it if you would leave a comment below if you have any differing opinions from me of where you would place these series, or if you agree with me, I would love to hear that as well. So yeah, with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!